So in this video, I'm going to be talking about 3 things to think about when you want to add background to your character art or art of a subject matter. So let's just jump right in. The first thing is going to be think graphically. So I guess I can just stick them down here. One is think graphically. So what do I mean by think graphically? Well, what are some graphic shapes? Simple graphic shapes, okay? Number 1 could be a square, a circle, and a triangle. Those are kind of your 3 basic shapes. And if we're talking graphically, then generally we're going to be filling these in and we're going to be treating these like simple graphic shapes. So obviously these can be stretched, these can be combined, these can be pushed and pulled, right? You can create ellipses or ovals, you can create really stretched triangles, you can create rectangles, right? You can do L shapes. So let's think about that for a second with one of these pieces of artwork, okay? So thinking really graphically, I'm just going to go ahead and add a selection around this piece here. And I'm just going to give it a tone. Maybe not that. Maybe about that, okay? And then I'm just going to drop in a nice big graphic shape. Right there. Right? Thinking really graphically. Now, what I want to do is I want to think about my A space and my B space, and I want to break these up visually so that one is larger than the other. I don't really want them to be the same size. So right here, they're actually pretty similarly sized. So I can actually just come back in here, take a nice big brush, and maybe do something like that. I kind of like the look of that. Yeah, I kind of like that. So I'm thinking background in graphic shape. So I'm just going to work a little bit more on this right now. And I'm going to break this girl out here, my character. The hair is going to be dark. So I'm not actually going to have this whole thing too dark. I'm not going to make this character like this. Now I could do this, but I'm not going to. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to give some backlighting to this character. So it's generally going to be dark, like this. Darken all this up. This gun looks bad. And I'm going to add some backlight. So we're going to see rim light, and I'm going to go on a top layer so we can see this better. And I'm just going to add some rim light behind her like this. Like that. Maybe add a little bit on the shoulder. So a quick tip about rim light. Rim light is not a hard shape like this. Rim light tends to get thicker and thinner as it goes around depending on how the light is catching it. So there's really a light kind of behind her. I'm thinking whether to put the light on the right or the left or just the back. So what we can actually do is we could have one on the back on this side pointing towards her like this, and then one on the back on this side pointing towards her like that as well. So then we can just get some nice rim light on both sides because I kind of want her to get broken out, but not too much. So just going to tone that down a little bit. And then what I'm going to do on her body, I'm going to make sure it's nice and dark. We're going to put a light in front of her. So the light in front of her is going to be angle of incident lighting. And that it means in the center of the form, you're going to have your highlights. So I'm going to get light here, light here, light here on that arm. Let's color this in a bit. This is all in the same layer. All right. And then I'm just going to have this graphic shape. And you'll notice that this is actually looking pretty cool now. You can put a little bit of a shadow there. Rotate these forms by adding shading on the sides. Remember, if you want to rotate a cylinder away from you, you shade the sides like this. See? And then you can add the highlight in the middle for angle of incident lighting. So anyways, rotating the cylinder away from us by adding a form right there. You can rotate this away. You can even add some up here to these areas like that. I'm not really going to go too detailed with this. Now, obviously, she could have a top on or something. It could be a dark top. We could have something like this. That looks pretty cool. Maybe we'll just do that so YouTube doesn't dislike us for drawing naked people. There we go. Yeah, I kind of like how that's turning out. Maybe I'll tone back some of this. But notice how the background is just left very graphic. So this leads into our second point, which is, I'll draw down here, number 2, it's about the character. It's not about the background. So 2, it's about the character or story, right? If you're drawing a scene with multiple characters and stuff, that's very important. So I'm going to put this down here. I'm going to stick this over here because we're going to be framing this next image. So number 2, let's go ahead and do this one up here. So it's about the character and it's about the story, all right? So this second piece isn't necessarily going to go specifically over this principle, but it's really going to read about the character anyways. So I'm going to go ahead and add a light kind of background to this, and then I'm going to add some kind of graphic streaks here. So this would kind of be tilted rectangles going across the scene. So maybe something like this. I kind of want to break up these shapes into different sizes. I'm going to make one go right through the head. A lot of the time you'll have a shape intersect right behind the head to bring focus to that. So now we want to think about our light direction. I'm going to go ahead and bring all this out just to separate the character before we think about lighting. So lighting is really important because while your drawing is telling you what's in the scene, your lighting is telling you how to feel about it. So your lighting will completely change how you feel about a scene, what's going on in the scene, and then the lighting make it dramatic or make it friendly or make it peaceful or make it dangerous. So this shot right here, let's see, maybe I'll have the light coming from her back, so this way, like that. I'm going to draw in white, and I'm going to make it lighter than the background. Not completely white, but I'm going to make this lighter than the background. And then as this gets further down, I will fade it off a little bit. We're going to get a core shadow on her. Right, we can add a shirt on this one too. So let's say, let's just add a shirt in here really quick. And then maybe some pants or shorts as well. Kind of workout outfit. Yeah, kind of like that. Add a little shadow underneath of her to put her on the ground. There we go. And then we can light her face a little bit because this is obviously about her. And if we want, we can Like that up there. Just like that. I'm not a huge fan of this going right through her shorts, so I'm probably going to take her shorts and maybe bring them up just a bit. Just so I don't get that tangency there. The gun is going to be black or dark. Maybe these heels will be dark as well. Like that. So I really want you to start thinking very graphically about your scenes and your characters, right? This could be a wall behind her that's getting light cast on it. This could be a, let me make a new layer. This could be a wall behind her that is getting light cast on it from maybe a window. So what you'll end up getting is potentially a skewed rectangle like this. Like that sort of thing. And then you might get those sorts of shapes from the window, the kind of cross things in the window. I don't really know what they're called, right? And then this could be softened. These edges can be softened a lot. So this is going to lead into our third point, which is making it read. And reading basically just means that you can see it. So 3, make it read. And what does this have to do with, like, what are some specific examples, right? What does this have to do with what we're doing right now? Well, value differences, edges, focal point. So values and contrast, / contrast. That means like something light next to something dark, or a light shape next to a dark shape. So for example, contrast. There's contrast between that triangle and that square. There's contrast between that. So for example, the higher the contrast, the more it grabs your attention. So this is the example that I usually give to students, which is if I have 2 of these and one of them is higher contrast than the other, you're basically going to look at that one first. So this one has much higher contrast. It gains more attention. And then say there's a third one. So let's just grab this, let's bring it down. Let's just say there's a third one, which may be even like this. And let's just say this one's even lower contrast. This one's like really low contrast. This one at the bottom, so A, B, C. B is the highest contrast, especially if you start doing stuff like this. B is highest contrast, most attention. A is the second most contrast, second most attention. And then C is least attention. So now if you consider this in terms of something like an environment or a background or a character and a background, then you can start really getting some good compositional elements. So let's just say, let's go in here and start adding a background to this one. So maybe we'll start doing something still graphical, but maybe a little bit more recognizable and less abstract. So number 1, I'm just going to drop a shape right in here. I'm not going to put it halfway. I'm going to put it right about there. Right? So I got a shape right there. And the background, let's just say we got all this back here. Maybe do something like this. And then I'm going to erase this out, maybe right here. So I'm thinking really graphically. I could even make a triangular shape like this, coming in at her face, something like that. Maybe I'll make it a little bit more. How about that? That's pretty cool. right? I'm basically just building with these shapes that I drew on the left, thinking graphically. But now I can actually turn this into something. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to sort of clean up the body over top of this example. Like this. All this stuff. Like that. We'll leave that dark. We'll make the light come from the front. So we'll get some shadows here, underneath the nose, underneath the chin. This is going to read against this shape. Now we'll just say, let's turn this into a wall, right? We can even add perspective. So just basically, where's my horizon line? And obviously this isn't a perspective lecture, but the first thing that I'm going to think is, where's my horizon line? So maybe I'll decide that it's going to be right about here. So then we could have shape down here, right? What is this shape? Oh, well, it could be plants. We could have some plants back there. And we can have the texture of the edges of the plants kind of popping out over that. Right? So there's that triangle. Maybe we get... There's that. And I'm really thinking about the read. So dark on medium, right? We got the arm on the wall. And then if I add in a shadow on the arm, if I add this, add in this kind of thing, right? There's all this. There's the hair. And now we can have, what's this in the background? Well, it could be clouds. This could be something in the background as well. We could add some more layers. Now notice that these layers in the background are C over here, down on the right. We do not want them super high contrast. Going to add in a little bit of perspective. Horizon lines here. Pretty flat perspective. So we're going to have maybe something like this going up. This is in the center. This goes up. And then this goes down a little bit. And then this is a wall. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw on a top layer here because I don't want the legs cut off. So there's just that shape right there, let's say. I'd have to make sure and check the anatomy, but for the sake of this, it's good enough. Lighting would be on the front, front, little shadow under here, shadow here. Now she's going to be casting a shadow on the wall. So I'm going to go back on my layer down there, and I'm just going to let her cast that shadow behind her. So this is going to really help her to read. I'm not going to go too crazy with it. Doesn't need to be that accurate right now. Again, this is just a sketch to see if we like this sort of composition here. Now we can add all kinds of things in the shot. We can add, you know, that. We could add lights. We could add pathing. We could add fences in the background if there's like a fence, if this is a park or something. We can add all sorts of that. I'm going to darken this wall a little bit more to have it read a little bit better. Go back up to this layer, fix this leg. Rotate that form away from me. Soft shadow. Soft because it is a cylinder, so you're going to end up getting cylindrical rendering. Cylindrical rendering. Right? Now we can have a little bit of contrast between potentially the grass or whatever the ground is made out of. Right? Probably won't be that high contrast. Could do something like that. Right? Looks bad without the sketch, but that's totally fine. So now looking at these three different compositions, thinking about it graphically, constructing it out of very graphic shapes. making sure it's about the character. Your highest contrast, your lines point towards the character, right? My triangle ends at the character's face. There's a lot going on right here. The background is not as busy. Remember, don't make it about the background unless you want it to be about the background. So an example of something that you would probably want to be about the background would be like a dark matrix composition where you have a character, maybe down here, and if they're dark, it makes it looks like it's their back, and then, right, you could have whatever they're looking at in the background, like mountains and clouds and stuff. It could be something, a castle or whatever. That would be an example of it not being about your character. But if you're drawing a character and you want to light them, then it definitely would probably be about your character. So I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to add a little bit more. This is kind of cool, actually. I like this one. There we go. So yeah, that's kind of cool. And then of course we can always clean this up with our rendering skills. So understanding how that works, local value, like this would be very, very simple to clean up, but we want to make sure that it's worth cleaning up in the first place. So we could get this coming down here, maybe bring the neck in a little bit. Right, that could be pretty cool. Have this right here. That light in the front would catch on these various parts. It could be really cool. But anyways, so I think I'm going to wrap it up there. This certainly isn't everything, but it's a good start. And I want you to try maybe adding some backgrounds to existing drawings and stuff that you've already made. Right? Maybe I'll just mess up these edges a little bit here. Remember, soft edges do not capture the attention as much as hard edges. So going down to this example, if we break this, where is that? Right here. If we break this out and we have an A and we have an A2, so let me shrink this and make a second one. If I soften these edges and I really harden the edges on the left one, this one on the left, so let's just say 1 and 2, 1 is going to read more than number 2. And you can actually really use this to your advantage because, say, for example, you want a third shape and maybe it's a circle and it's right here. You can have a soft shape and a hard shape as well. So for example, going up here, right, we've got this soft shape in the background. So we can just, I'm not using like a soft brush or anything for this, so I got to do all this manually, but so if you want this gun to read against the background, you can just make the background shadow or lighting blurry. So that would end up looking a lot more like, a lot cooler. We could lighten this a little bit, lighten this, start to, on my wrong layer, I can start to do this sort of thing, break this out, have some cool stray hairs coming out there. Maybe have a highlight in the hair, like that. Maybe decide to break the side of this head out from the background, and we'd probably get a nice cheekbone shape in this, that sort of thing going on in there. And then of course we can refine all of this, and if we want we can add another light to her left that just breaks out some of these shapes in here a little bit. This would probably be pretty dark. Shadow. this could be in shadow. We could have her arm on the far side read, right? We can figure all this stuff out. But the graphical elements remain very similar. And you can obviously add, say, oh, this is a wall in the background, so maybe I'll add a, baseboard or whatever it's called around that. And you can actually start to maybe show some perspective going on, with the ground. So maybe the horizon line's here, your vanishing point's here. You can start to maybe add some perspective in there. A lot of the time with character-focused illustrations, your perspective will be very flat. Like, it's going to be graphic rather than something really deep with a lot of foreshortening and all that kind of thing. So you could put a little outlet down here, depending on what country you're from. It would make the holes different, I guess. But I'm from the States, so the holes would look like this. Right? But you don't want to call too much attention to other parts of the composition, but they still have to include something. So, you can do something like that. There's that wall. Even if you want, you could have a cabinet here. I'd keep it very flat. So, you'd probably have like something like that. You could have a vase on the cabinet, right? You'd want to show the difference between the two sides probably. You could have underneath of the cabinet, behind the cabinet, right? Maybe show just a little bit of perspective on it. Maybe there's the door. I'm kind of getting carried away here, but, it's all good. Could darken the edges of this a little bit if I go back to my selection tool and I just sort of darken the edges maybe like this, add a subtle gradient in some of these areas to try to bring the focus away from them and onto her. But the graphic read is still the same. See? So there's 3 different examples of backgrounds to add to the same character, and 3 different ways to think about it, right? You want to think graphically. You want to make sure it's about the character by making sure that the highest contrasted areas are on probably their face or wherever you want people to pay attention to. So I hope that was helpful. That's going to be it for this video, and I will see you in the next one.